is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the feature film, in which, you know, pretty much what happens in the book also happens in the movie, mostly. So, if you liked this movie, buckle up. Welcome to Unspoiled.
Are you coming to the tree? They strung up a man, they say, who murdered 3. Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you coming to the tree where a dead man called out for his love to flee? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you?
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm RoShawn. Did anyone like this movie? Do we know for a fact that that's the thing?
I checked the old, what do you call it? Rotten Tomatoes. And it looks like it got like a 65 from critics and like an 85 from audiences.
85?
Yes, ma'am.
I beg your
I know
fucking
that
pardon.
Rotten Tomatoes is not the end-all, be-all of public opinion in any sense, but...
Well, I am stunned by that 85%. That seems high.
So, I feel like, look, I did not like this movie either, but I feel like you have a stronger feeling about it than I even did. So, go ahead and like tell me where you're coming from here. What were your main gripes?
All right. So, full disclosure, I was already tired when I put the movie on. Mm-hmm. We just finished the book. Right.
So it's fresh in your mind.
We just did this. Mm-hmm. And I'm still salty about the way the book ended. Mm-hmm. And I was already tired and I'm a little cranky. And I put it on in good faith. Like, I was willing to, the first thing I said to myself was, I'm not going to bother clocking what changes they made. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just not even going to try to keep track. And I'm just going to enjoy this movie. The movie itself would not allow me to do either of those things. The changes were so glaring. They made 0 sense. This movie is 258 minutes long.
Is it that long? I feel like mine didn't say that long.
Is it 258 or 158? Is it one? It's 2
hours and 37 minutes is what I've got.
So that's 158. I'm sorry.
Okay.
2.5 hours long. This movie is 2.5 hours long. And they cut a bunch of shit. Mm-hmm.
Give us an example.
The entire way the games go in the arena is different. Mm-hmm. The girl is it Clemencia?
That gets bitten?
Yeah.
Yes. We don't even see what happened with her.
She drops with the snake bite and then she's gone.
Yeah.
All of that weirdness, all of the dread that surrounds Dr. Gall, the reasons why we know she's like a fucking psychopath, like, gone. Mm-hmm. This is Janus, Coriolanus friendship, never to me felt real. It never felt like there's a reason for Sejanus to believe that Coriolanus is his true friend. Mm-hmm. I got up and left the room for a few minutes to go check on Steven, and I came back, and I don't know if I just missed it, but I don't think I did. Coriolanus and Sejanus are just putting birds in a cage when Coriolanus starts to record without, unless I missed it, the audience
thought I missed something. So if we missed it, we both missed it.
Like with no and I thought it was weird because when Coriolanus goes into the lab for the first time, there are birds in the lab, and Dr. Gall mentions a quick bit about the birds, and I was just like, that's so weird that they would put that in here. That's not coming up until way later in 12, and that's Dr. K. Like, what the fuck? But I guess that insert was supposed to make up for them completely getting rid of what's going on with the Jabberjays and the Mockingbirds in 12, and the fucking him going to officer school, like that becomes something that his commander recommends for Coriolanus to do, as opposed to it being Coriolanus's own ambition. It's just, and it just goes on and on and on. In my opinion, this was a mess. I'm so sorry. This was a mess.
Yeah, it was a really strange, and you guys know, I'm just going to have to accept, when it comes to the movies for this franchise, they are just not for me. I haven't been happy with any of them. I have constantly felt like they missed the point, and they are playing right into the bullshit that she's making fun of. And I just don't think that they have they have this weird, like, self-serious quality while not actually really taking the important parts seriously. And it's a strange combo. And so I went into this like a little nervous anyway, because Coriolanus is somebody who, the whole point of him is that he comes across as extremely caring and sincere to people who are not in his head and don't know what a fucking maniac he is. And when you don't have any internal dialogue for a character like that,
excuse me,
bless you,
sorry,
when you don't have any internal monologue for a character like that, they just come across once again as actually seeming more caring than they are. So the results is that Corio isn't like as terrible seeming in this as he is in the books, because you just get the external shit. And I really had kind of thought they would find a way to make up for that a little bit, and they don't at all. So the way that things go in the end with him and Lucy Gray feels even more wildly out of nowhere, because he just hasn't felt as ambitious and self-serving throughout the whole movie as he does in the books, and they just don't really seem to attempt, in my opinion, anything to like bridge that gap. And then I was looking forward to also seeing how the music was, and I will say, this girl's voice is insane. I loved the songs. They had this bluegrass quality. I thought they were beautiful. But here's what I wanted. I wanted the movie to lean on that kind of music for the film's score. I wanted it to be the energy of the entire film. And instead we get that big bombastic full orchestra type score throughout, which drowns so many of the big moments that are, and so much of this movie, the story is very about music, but also sound, because of the way that Jabberjays and Mockingjays play into everything. So like the later section of the movie where he is watching this kid get hanged and he yells like for his girl to run, all of the Mockingjays begin to copy him, but there's also this full dramatic score in the background that almost drowns it out. Like, it's not allowed any breathing room. And so it just completely undercuts the kind of like haunting quality of that plot element. And it's an element that's also so important to the way that he ends up betraying Sejanus, that I don't understand why you wouldn't lean into it harder and make it like so much more part of the central theme.
Right.
Even the part where he finally gets hanged and he yells "Ma." the moment where the birds are screaming "Ma" is super short, and then just kind of abruptly ends. And again, there's this like heart-wrenching score playing over it, so that the whole thing feels like we're telling you that you should be sad right now.
Yeah, instead of letting us. Yeah. Like kind of like taking us out of the moment. Like, there were just a lot of really confusing choices that were made throughout the entire movie. Like, I just kept finding myself being like, why would they do that here? Or why would they take that part out but leave this other part in? Or like, why would, you know what I mean? I just was questioning almost every bit of direction throughout the entire film. Yeah. There is just like the Coriolanus that we get in this movie, because we're denied his sort of internal monologue, which you just sort of addressed, and we talked about that in the books a little bit, like wondering like how the movie was going to do it. This character, like I never felt like I understood what this character's motivation was. Like there were other people telling me, oh, he wants to win the Plinth Prize, which wasn't even a thing until later in the book, right? Yeah. So they got rid of the whole purpose and the need to even have the Plinth Prize. That's a whole like subplot in itself, how that comes about, because that's Sejanus's dad getting him out of trouble, right? But instead, now in the movie, that's just what the prize at the end of the year is called. The shit about Sejanus's mom is completely gutted.
Yeah,
everything from
there's one mention of it, but from like another student, and then she's never seen again.
Yeah, like they make fun of her, like they make fun of her, like the fact that he calls her Ma, and then Coriolanus gets like a joke off about how she dresses. I think she has one scene where she hugs Sejanus when he comes out of the arena that night when he had snuck in. But the interplay between how Coriolanus sort of becomes part of this family, and they, especially Ma, take him as a genuine person. And like, so at the end of the movie, when Gaul is like, oh no, Strabo of Plinth is going to make sure everything is covered, and like
it feels really weird,
you know, and not for nothing, like all right, so at the end of the movie we see like Coriolanus and Lucy Gray have their big falling out in the woods, right? And then he's back at the Capitol with Dr. Gaul, and oh
my God,
there's just like when we see Coriolanus and Lucy Gray have their fallout in the woods, then he's back in the Capitol when he poisons Highbottom. There's not a lot in this movie that tells me that this young man has gotten here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because all of the other times where he made really selfish, self-serving, using of people to get to his ends, like none of that is really made clear in the movie. His relationship with Tigress like disappears. I don't know, guys. I don't fucking know what happened. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's for me, it's a symptom of like, well, we have these certain plot beats that we've got to hit. And again, the focus becomes like, we need to get from point A to point B. And they forget about making us give a shit about getting from point A to point B. You need to have like some personal aspects in there for things to come together like this. This is supposed to be like a human driven story.
Yeah.
And they're just so zoomed in on like the games themselves and the romance that it feels like I don't see the other parts of this that I found compelling. Sejanus is almost like one-dimensional.
Yeah, you know? Very much so.
He just doesn't feel like a complete person, and like you said, their relationship just doesn't seem of the depth that later when he's like, we're like brothers, right? I was like,
based on fucking what?
Yeah.
There's a point at the beginning of the movie when they're all in class and they're teasing about Sejanus before he walks up. And one of the girls says to Coriolanus about how, like, he's your friend. And he's like, he's not my friend.
Yeah.
Coriolanus would never. He would smirk and, like, say something a little much slicker than that. Like, well, I'm friends with everybody. Everybody is my friend, you know?
And Sejanus gets in a dig as well. And that was not him either.
Not exactly. Yeah. Guys, I don't know what to tell you. I don't. And then, like, the other shit that they could have done to make up for it, which would be like world building. If you're not going to give me the character stuff, you know, really flesh out this world so I get an understanding of who these capital people are in this point in their history.
Mm-hmm.
Very little of that. Nothing that resonated. The classmates, like, we just rushed through, like, 2.5 hours, and we rushed through so much shit. I don't know where the time went.
Yeah, it was really weird. I agree. It felt like we were flying through things, and yet, you know, I don't know, maybe this would have been a movie where you could have broken it into two instead of trying to fly through, but I don't really think it was worth it based on what we've got.
No, if this is the way they were,
maybe.
Yeah, if this is the way they were going to tell the story, then thank you for not making it 2 movies. Like, yeah, thank you for saving me the fucking trouble. Yeah, so.
Yeah, so guys, and I'm gonna this is probably gonna be a somewhat short episode because so many things do just happen according to the book that it doesn't feel that interesting to point out. And the things that don't go according or weren't done super well, I don't want to go like beat by beat and talk about every single solitary one of them.
No, not at all. I
don't think it's necessary.
Yeah. There's just so much missing, like the desperation of what it's like to be a Snow in this grand apartment that is fallen into disrepair because you've had to sell everything, but how you're still trying to keep up appearances. Mm-hmm. Like if they didn't have High Bottom literally spelling it out for us, who would have known?
They kind of try to set it up in the beginning with the church and the potato paste and all of this stuff, but they just don't know how to handle a character that's so internally motivated.
They have Coriolanus and Lucy Gray sharing one meal at the zoo, and he's already telling her, she offers him a piece of the food that he has brought, and they have the conversation about, she's like, I thought that you would have everything all the food you could eat in the capital. And he's like, one time I ate a whole jar of paste. Like, they have that happening. I don't remember it being the very first meeting, at the zoo. There's no build up to, she's telling him at one point in 12 how he trusts her and she trusts him, and what a big emotional moment that was. I didn't even buy that this was a romance. Yeah. We don't get any of that. And again, I guess it's just difficult for them to portray because it's all inner monologue shit. But the way that he feels possessive of Lucy Gray, and the jealousy he has around his ownership of her, just, I don't know, y'all. It feels very much like they just couldn't wait to make another movie to make $1 billion, and they just thought they could, they could just throw whatever they wanted on the screen and people would run and come see it because they love the franchise so much. It is just
damn shame. It's a damn shame. Yeah. I really am frustrated and at the score thing, and I know I've said this with the previous movie as well, that like, you know, they have the hanging tree being this huge number that's orchestral and playing over scenes of like the rebels bombing dams and stuff like that. And there's just something so I'm trying to think of the word I want here, because it just reminds me so much of the way the Capitol would stage something like this. It reminds me of this is what it looks like when a movement dies, whatever it is that Haymitch said. It feels like that, where you're trying to have this moment so hard that you're like undermining everything that actually makes it important or emotional. And like with the Mockingjays in that scene, like imagine if this guy gets hanged and there's this like awful silence after he yells to his girlfriend to run, and then all of a sudden one of them starts crying out, and then another one, and then all of a sudden it like goes on, and it's a buildup that kind of takes over the whole like sound for maybe like 20 seconds. You transition to the next scene and it's still sort of echoing in his head, especially after Sejanus is executed.
Exactly.
You have that be like a motif in his head of hearing the birds repeatedly. And that would also do something in terms of making him like pointing out how he hates the Mockingjays, which is so funny how much they hammer that in the book, but the movie, they don't really ever go there at all.
Not even a little bit.
So there's just so many, they don't let things breathe. And then they have these like, okay, the one thing I'll say that I actually thought was well done, despite really not having the same energy of the book at all. We've got our Caesar Flickerman's predecessor, Lucky.
That's Jonathan Schwartzman, right?
Yes.
I always liked him.
And he is a little bit more competent than he seemed in the book.
Yeah.
There's a real sort of like pathetic clown quality to him in the book, and here he's more of a slick showman. They kind of combine him and the other character, I can't remember his name, but the kinds of moments where he's like just saying what the weather is about to be and stuff, and then he's like, and we're back, you know. I thought that those were somewhat well done because they really were grotesque. It really hammered home how like these people are really not seen as people. This is nothing to anybody, you know? And so that's the kind of shit I am looking for a lot more, both from this and from the original trilogy of movies, or quadrilogy, whatever. And I also thought it was funny how he keeps saying that's what happens when you do stuff.
When you do stuff, yeah.
What? Whose line was that? Did he like? That feels like something that nobody would put into a script. I don't like. It doesn't feel. You know what I mean? But it weirdly worked because it's such a on its surface like poorly constructed lesson. I put that in scare quotes, really.
Right.
But I couldn't help but laugh a little bit at it because I was just like, he did it. He just said that again. And it's right after, you know, the girl, I think, goes up and slits, what's his face's throat. I can't remember anybody.
When Marcus is hanging and she goes and kind of like he's like, is that a mercy killing or murder?
Yeah. And they don't have the whole thing with like him being paraded through the streets and all of them in the like cattle car thing. Lucy's song at the beginning when she first gets reaped came across a lot more angry than I pictured it in the book.
Yeah. It was a lot
I wasn't
more
exactly mad about it. I was just sort of taken by surprise.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot more angry and defiant than I pictured it in the books. Again, not really mad at the choice because I guess that's kind of like how you would really be feeling in that moment if you were her. So like I wasn't like, I was like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah.
But
it was sort of, I think it was just like, I had imagined her as somebody who was playing for the camera in a like kind of a more false way most of the time. And what we actually get in this movie is her being kind of genuine a lot. Even though she is performing, the performance is based on how she's actually feeling.
Yeah.
And I had sort of imagined her as performing for like a real straight up lie, basically.
Yeah.
About her current emotional state.
They also really like disconnected her from the Covey. Like they like we don't really meet any of them. Like she says Maud Ivory's name and we see her singing, but like we don't spend any time with them really. Unless of course it happened when I like left the room for a brief moment. But and that was such an important part of who Lucy Gray was, and it went a long way in explaining like to the reader like what her values were and like kind of like what to sort of like what to expect of her. Like there's when later in the book when Coriolanus is concerned that Lucy might hold it against him that he narked on Sejanus. One of his points of reference is that like, oh, the Covey as a group would frown upon people who do stuff like that, right? It's like their value system would inform how she would treat me if she knew I had done such a thing. And they just like axed all of that for, I don't know, reasons.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, man. I don't know. But yeah, so let's I guess let's do this.
She says, I guess let's do this 25 minutes into the recording.
Well, because
I think we're doing it.
Yeah, well, we haven't, like, I know we don't want to go like beat by beat, but I feel like we should at least like do a facsimile of a, like, the movie opens, at them is it like like he's like 10 years old or however old he's supposed to be. And we get like him seeing his neighbor cut the leg off of somebody that's lying on the street. So the movie is like, see the horrors that he had to see. You know what I mean? Like it's
this is like, I immediately was like, oh, this is not going to be good. The whole opening scene just failed so utterly to hit for me. And I have said it before, and I will say it until the day I die. They have to stop just CGIing in the surroundings on sets. It doesn't work. There's going to be occasionally times when you can get away with it, but mostly I can feel that they are on an empty soundstage that's got some rocks strewn across it. This whole thing doesn't feel real in any sense. And every building that they're in and like all of it feels so fake and lacks any sort of life. The lighting doesn't really work because the setting isn't real. So the lighting feels off. All of it combined is giving AI. And I can't connect with it. It feels like I'm watching a video game. And that's exactly how things start. Is like these two kids scuttling across this like open area, and it's supposed to be like, oh, this is how the city looks after this thing, except that there's two children and one man only in this big open area with a bunch of bodies, and that's all we get. We don't get to see any of the other people who are struggling. We don't get any like sense of, oh, we've had to slowly sell our possessions. Everything has emptied out of our apartment, and we have a montage of like trading for the very basics to get by. I was fully expecting that kind of montage where we see the decline. We see how they have to keep scraping, and how every time he steps out, it's harder and harder for him to keep up appearances. But no, we just get this and him and Tigress watching this man cut this girl's leg off, like way out in the open.
Exactly.
A lot of people would probably see him.
Like, we have, like, the implication is that this man is chopping this leg off because they're fucking starving. And he is taking that leg home to eat.
Yeah.
This movie is just some ghoul in the streets with a machete or a cleaver.
She says to him, because he says, why is he doing that? And she says he's starving.
Oh, does she?
Yeah. So they tell us.
I should have watched with closed captioning.
But it's not like, there's not enough time given to this whole state of affairs to feel any of it. And so he's like getting into the shower and getting ready for his like big moment at school.
I do want to ask one question about book changes, and you may or may not remember this, but when they go home, when they're still little, him and Tigress, they go home and the grandmam is announcing, because there's like soldiers in the house, that that the father is dead, and he was killed in District 12.
Yes, I feel like I remember
that was a thing.
I think so, because and we find it out kind of late in the book, I feel like.
Oh, all right, okay.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's canon.
All right. So yeah, so you're right. Did we go to him? There's also that weird ass picture of his father in the penthouse, that like Art Deco stained glass.
Yeah.
Feel. I mean, it's kind of a cool effect to have in your house. Like, if
it is cool looking.
If I could have a stained glass of me, glaring down in my own apartment at the people in my house, I would do that.
We don't get that much of Tigress in the movie.
We do not, and I was sad about it.
I wanted more of her in the book as well, though, so this is not a complaint I reserve for the movie.
No, I was hoping the movie would take the opportunity to just do some shit, I mean, and it did. It just did the wrong shit.
So then he goes to the big moment in the, I don't know, like auditorium. I don't know what to call this room, but he, says something to the girl. I think is it Clemencia that like meets him and starts asking him if he's going to be hungry for the dinner later. And he says something about how like, oh no, I couldn't even finish a steak if they put it in front of me. These tiny, tiny little hints at such a major issue in his life. Mm-hmm. It's just, you blink and you miss them, and it's such a pervasive motivator. And the movie just doesn't really like
nothing.
Nah. And then we meet Dr. Gall here. And this is when we find out that like the plinth prize is already in effect, that we're not doing this as a later thing once because in the book it happens because Sejanus goes into the arena and we have to make up for it somehow. His father decides to create this as a means of paying some kind of monetary punishment. But in the movie, they have put the plinth prize in place already. Yep. Which, like, I don't have a huge problem with, like, in general, just because I can understand the economy of storytelling needed in a movie to, like, get things moving along sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I get doing this, but, like, I do feel like you want to set up where the plinth prize came from a little bit more, because we just met Sejanus for 2 seconds. I, watching this without the context of the books, would not remember that his last name was Plinth or where the plinth prize money was coming from. Mm-hmm. The whole thing would just not really register for me. Yeah. So it's just kind of odd the way that they skate right over all of the details for this. And you don't even need to make it the plinth prize. Like you could have just called it like the scholarship and left the plinth prize out of this
altogether.
Altogether. And that would have been exactly the same. Yep. And what do you think of Viola Davis as Dr. Gall?
So I love Viola Davis. Mm-hmm. I do. And she does bring an air of weirdness and creepiness to this character. She apparently just decided to go like all in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird because nobody else in the Capitol is this weird yet. You know? They give her like these weirdly colored contacts.
Mm-hmm. One of her eyes is normal and the other is like bright blue. Mm-hmm. Like opaque blue.
Yeah, it's a very unnerving effect. Mm-hmm. I mean, she did what she could with this, but it just is like, because the rest of everything is so understated. It's weirdly understated. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So she just looks like a character from a completely different universe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's definitely giving One Piece villain for me.
Yes, I have not seen that. You know? Yeah, so I mean, it just feels like she's in a different movie mm-hmm. than everybody else is in.
And this is a criticism that we had with the original movies as well, that they don't go far enough with a lot of the stuff in the Capitol. And that keeps being the theme with this. And it's also something we brought up with Game of Thrones. They're finally having the Associ have blue hair and a very distinctive different culture, instead of just like, oh, everybody over there pretty much looks like everybody in Westeros, except they wear more animal skins, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's like the Capitol, we've got everybody in outfits that are actually just stylish enough you could still wear them in the real world and nobody would really be looking yep. at you weird for any of it. Yep. It's just high fashion feeling, but not in a daring or exciting way.
Not even a little bit.
So that is like the thing with her design, just feels really out of place, especially her fucking lab coat that's like all crimson at the top mm-hmm. later on. I get what you're doing. How could I not? It's like a fucking sledgehammer to the face, what you're trying to do. It's too much. Dial it down. Yeah. Everything else you feel cool with dialing down. So what are you doing with this here?
Yeah. Agreed.
And this is something that I was a little bummed about with Lucy Gray as well, because, you know, she shows up in these like rainbow frilled skirts and it's a big high impact look and she's got dramatic makeup and everything. And they don't do any of that. Her skirts are so,
they're like
unremarkable.
They're just like pastels, you mm-hmm. know, it's like a light pink and a lilac, you know, like yeah. where like I pictured something almost clownish, like exactly. like primary red, primary blue. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, mm-hmm. you know, she's wearing an outfit that looks like you could find it at that. What was that store in the mall? Charlotte Russe or whatever.
Charlotte Russe. Oh, those days. I used to shop there like with my goddamn job. I did too. That's where I got my cheap shoes that hurt my feet so bad.
Oh, they used to have the cutest shit, and then
they did.
Can't shop there now.
Yeah, right. I don't know. They must still exist, though. I think. I feel like I saw them recently.
It's been a couple of years. Last time I was in a mall at Christmas time, I saw them. It was not this past Christmas. It's been like 3 Christmases ago, but fairly recent. And they were still going, man. They were still going.
I could see them coming out with a Hunger Games line. Why not? Did I tell you they came out with a Hunger Games chocolate line from this like gourmet chocolatier, and it was 12 bars, each flavored according to like the districts and what they.
You most certainly did not.
It was such a cool idea, and then I went and like read what the flavors were, and all but like 3 of them were the most basic bitch boring flavors you ever heard, and I was so disappointed. There were a few that had something interesting going on, but then there was like, you know, Phoenix District, I think it's 4, that's the ocean, mm-hmm. and they were like sea salt caramel, and I was like, oh, really? That's it? But anyway,
I can get sea salt caramel at home.
Look, I am just saying that every time that we have had an issue with like the choices, it tends to be, you didn't go far enough. Why are you here then? Why are you making this movie when you don't seem like you really want to do what the source material is showing us.
Right.
There's like a weird, it's like, I feel like Ryan Reisman said something somewhere about how the Double Ds who did Game of Thrones were really embarrassed at the fact that they were adapting a fantasy series. And so they never really went hard enough because they wanted people to forget that it was fantasy.
Mm.
And that's a little bit how I feel about these movies, is like, we want it to be a certain thing because that's the pre-built fan base. But we don't want to go far, like so far with it, because we want it to feel grounded in a way that is, you're trying to make things feel grounded on one sense by being like, oh, everybody's going to be dressed in gray and white and black. But then when it comes to the fact that they're all perfectly coiffed and clean and everything feels shiny and new in a way that doesn't really make sense, that kind of realism isn't a priority at all.
Mm.
And it just feels like you're getting it backwards, guys. That's not like the making the color scheme a bit more appropriate for the real world isn't the point. That's not the part that makes this feel real. It's supposed to be the characters. It's supposed to be the world that you have built and how similar it can feel to ours in some ways. And that's something that you should be able to accomplish no matter what people are wearing. It shouldn't matter.
Right. Right.
You know? I'm just going to... It's just, I have a very vivid imagination, and I dream basically in sort of movie montages a lot of the time. So I had a lot of ideas of ways that they could play certain moments really dramatically for the movie. And then to see, I was hoping so much that they would have learned something from the last movies, and they just completely used the same playbook, and there was no lesson learned at all.
Yeah.
To me, you know,
even like I'm just like looking now, we're at the Reaping, and I'm looking at Coriolanus's classmates, and there was so much there just within the classmates, his relationship to each. I know maybe the movie didn't want to take time to do a deep dive on each person,
mm-hmm.
but just to get a sense of the community that Coriolanus is trying to pretend he's still a part of, and then contrast it with what we know his circumstances really are, and like what a struggle it is for him to maintain this sort of facade.
Mm-hmm.
And we just really don't. I mean, we get like him and Clemmy. I just call her Clemmy. You know, him lying to her about how he got to school and the breakfast that he had and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But you never get like a real sense that Coriolanus Snow is separate from his classmates. And separate for multiple reasons. Separate because he thinks he's better than them. Separate
mm-hmm.
because his circumstances are actually way worse than the rest of them. Like I never feel like you understand that this is a man who fundamentally believes he's better than everybody else that's in the room that he's in.
Yeah, agreed.
Peter Dinklage, who you did tell me he played High Bottom, and then I forgot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then so I was all like shocked when he showed up. I was like, oh my God, that's right.
What do you think of his performance?
I think he did the best he could do.
Agree.
With what he had to work with. I
thought he did a nice stoned. He didn't play it too hard. He didn't go too far with it. It was understated enough that you were just like, oh, this is sad. Yeah. Without it turning into something sort of comedic or so extreme that you would expect him to be taken off the stage.
Right,
you know?
right. I enjoyed his little scene with Snow in the hall outside after the Reaping, where he calls Snow on his bullshit, but again, he tells Snow to his face, look at you here with your makeshift shirt, and I know you don't have a pot to piss in. And but then the camera cuts to the actor playing Snow, and he's giving. I think he's trying to give like understated rage,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then he goes home and immediately like vents to Tigress, but he's venting about like who he got in the reaping and how he got 12 and it's a sabotage me, and I don't know. It just
What you're saying this like you expected him to say something else. What were you?
I wanted to see like something about like because Snow thinks he's better than Dean Highbottom.
Sure.
Right? And again, like I said a minute ago, how he thinks he's better than literally everybody else that's around him. And I don't feel like you ever really get that from him at all. And I bring up the Highbottom moment because when he leaves that moment, because he can't like just cuss Highbottom out like to his face,
sure.
right? But I wanted like this explosive kind of like, everything is like a crumb under my shoe. Kind of, I'm going to show you know what I mean? And it just, I don't know. It felt like that could have been a moment where we got that side of him, but we get Tigress instead advocating for Lucy Gray, which I'm not mad about Tigress doing that, but it kind of takes the wind out of the sails of the moment that Coriolanus seemed to be building up to, which would have shown us and given us like our first inclination of like, boy, on the outside, this guy seems like he has it together and that he's like a normal fucking person. But one peek inside that head and woo boy.
Yeah.
We never get peeks in his head. That's the thing.
Yeah. And the whole thing with like Dean Highbottom coming at him and being like, oh, you don't have a pot to piss in. Because we haven't been inside his head. It just feels like, wow, why is he so hateful? Like, this dude is just trying to get by because we don't know how completely poisonous Snow kind of already is. It just seems like he's being bullied by a teacher for no reason. So it's like, what's your problem, man? Instead of it being like, no, I can see through your bullshit because I used to be best friends with your dad and I know the type and I can see exactly how you're trying to play all of this. Yeah. All right. So a couple things. Let's talk about the actual reaping scene. Because it's sort of weird the way that this is set up. We've got all of the tributes already selected by the time that they are doled out. Yeah,
they're all like watching. They're all like in this auditorium, like you said, for lack of a better word, this lecture hall, maybe, watching on these little TVs the reapings happening at the different districts, and Highbottom is simultaneously sort of announcing like who goes, what tribute belongs to which mentor. And it goes down the list. And eventually you get to Lucy Gray's reaping. And then for hers, we cut into like, we go to District 12 for hers as opposed to just watching it on the screen. I was a little bummed out how tiny that snake was, y'all. I don't know what I was picturing.
She had to have it hidden on her person. It can't be that big.
Obviously. Why I say I don't know what I was picturing. But when she pulled out this little itty bitty garter snake, I was like, aw.
I thought you had a python stuck up in there somewhere.
I just thought it was like going to be something a little bit more. But this is not a dig at the movie. This is just like a weird thing that my mind was doing. Like, obviously, it can't be a fucking boa constrictor.
So, yeah, this it's sort of odd because I think that everybody has been selected except the tributes for 12. It's supposed to be basically that, like, I don't know, the time difference or something. By the time they announce that he is going to get the tribute from 12, the reaping hasn't happened yet. And it's sort of a weird vibe to me that everybody already has a photo, except then we jump into the reaping for her out of nowhere. And I was like, I don't need to see the other reapings, but you could have a time lapse where we make it clear everybody is watching them together instead of coming into it after the fact, which is a weird way to do it, because seeing the reaping and how people react and the just that plays such a role in knowing what the person is going to be like that you're assigned. And they clearly don't have it together in terms of the showmanship of the games yet. But I thought that since the school is doing this thing with the mentor program, that they would prioritize that, and they just it really just starts things off on everything we're going to pretend is all about Coriolanus.
Yep.
In a similar way as we did with Everything is About Katniss in the original movie, that I felt once again sort of missed the point, that she's supposed to be one of many and actually not that remarkable, but just gets put into these situations repeatedly. So anyway, the Mayfair is quite hateful, though. You really do hate her.
You really do hate her right off the bat.
So yeah, then we get her performance, and it's, like I said, a lot angrier than I was expecting it to be. The kiss, you can kiss my ass. She just screams it into the camera. I had thought of it as a straight up lyric. That's a playful little moment.
Nope.
She is just like, no, for real though. So, all right, jumping ahead here, we have the cattle car thing. They're each in a different car that was a little bit, in the book, I'm pretty sure they were all shoved into the same one.
It definitely felt like they were all in one big cattle car.
I'm not sure if that's literally true, but I thought it was.
But here it's not. And then, he's waiting for her on the platform with his little rose. And when he's trying to follow them, when they get like pushed into the truck that's taking them to the zoo, and he's trying to ask peacekeepers for help, and they're all just stone faced. He's like, "Excuse me, can I, sir, can I?" And they're just like not giving him the time of day. For some reason, that made me really laugh. I don't know why, but I don't know. I was just like, these dudes are looking right through him. Also, this is such a small thing. I could not get over the Star Trek badges, like little things on their lapel.
Okay, I kept getting brought up short by that because I was sort of like, wait, why is that? Oh, yeah, it looks just like that. Why would you do that?
Like, clearly it's supposed to be like an Academy pin lapel. Like, I guess it's safe. But, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, guys, I feel like we should all be quite aware. There's no way you didn't know what this looked like to everybody else.
So he dives into this truck. And he's in there with all the tributes, and they're all, like, ganging up on him. And she does the thing, like, obviously, if you hurt him, your families at home aren't going to be safe. He's explaining that he's a mentor, and, you're all going to get one. I'm just here to help, and all this jazz. And the kids in this truck are, like, very, very menacing. And it's not that I think they shouldn't be. Like, I think that they should be menacing towards Coriolanus. But then they, like, start looking at Lucy Gray kind of like, all right, well, what's so fucking special about you? And I can't remember how it goes in the book, so this is not a complaint like, oh, the book was different. I don't really remember. But as I was watching it, I was just like, I expected them all to be much more traumatized and, like, worried about where they were going and not quite having the pack mentality just yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so.
Like I know we end up doing a pack thing because these kids get pushed into that, right? They have to become that. That's part of, like, the dehumanization of them being part of the games. but they're already fucking pack animals immediately.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was like, maybe I missed that in the book or whatever, but it just
No, I don't think so, because like I said in the book at one point, they have this Dr. Gall like being like, see, and that's what humanity is really like after he goes into the arena. But I pointed out at the time that like actually all the stories we've been hearing have been about how the different tributes have been trying to help each other, sharing food, and taking watch to look out for animals, and all of it was about how they tried to stick together and have each other's backs as much as they could up until the end. And so the fact that they just completely cut that and made them sort of vicious right away. Mm-hmm. I mean, I understand them wanting to go after Snow, but it was sort of a moment when it's part of why I asked about like the cattle cars, because the cattle cars themselves are a really grim moment as you realize that the transportation situation is much, much more luxurious in the present. Mm-hmm. But in the book, they're being starved on the way there and are so weak by the time they actually get to the capital that when they let them out, they're falling out of the cattle car and like breaking bones. Mm-hmm. And the peacekeepers couldn't care less. And everybody is in pretty good shape. They're like dirty, but they're like that movie dirty where they look amazing and just have a smear or two of like, you know, some black face paint here and there. Mm-hmm. And so then when they're all in the truck, because they haven't made it clear about like the trauma that they have endured just getting here, all of them are too hype and have too much energy and are too ready to start some shit when they should already be kind of beaten down. Yep. And the anger should have a lot less energy to it. Yep. And just be this like really scary kind of quiet resentment that is a tension that builds instead of being something so showy. Mm-hmm. This coral girl like getting in her face, they made a villain when it really wasn't a villain. That's the point. 100%, a lot of it, you know?
100%. Yeah. I'm
sorry, guys. I you know, I don't like disliking things that I'm covering, but it's just extra frustrating when I feel like there is so much potential and it's all right there, already written. And if you could just like wrap your brain around what actually makes it good, then you would get how to play it. And it's like they see that this is popular enough to make a movie out of, but it doesn't feel like they really get why it hits the way that it does. And so everything that it's like, again, to bring up Game of Thrones, the whole thing with how they were convinced they needed to make this series into a TV show once they got to the Red Wedding. And looking back, how telling that is. Because the Red Wedding is this big splashy moment, but it's by no means the heart of the series. And so once you realize that was their motivation, was this like very shocking butchery kind of moment, it makes you go, oh yeah, they just really didn't get the material, you know? So it just bums me out that there are people who have the kind of power that they can make these movies and they just don't seem to have like the literacy to understand the emotion in them and how to exploit that part of the story. It's just really like wasteful and frustrating because I know there are other people out there who would have been able to do this really well. I don't think that this is something that you couldn't make a movie out of. I think it could make an amazing movie. They're very cinematic books, but the whole priority system that they've got about what needs to be paid attention to and how they pay attention to it is completely out of whack, and just it shows how knowledgeable Suzanne Collins was about the showbiz industry, that she was able to call a lot of this in the book, and then they just did it.
Then they just fall right. They fall right into it without like any sense of irony. You know, they're not like doing it in a kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Look, we're doing the thing that the book says we do. They're just doing the thing the book says they do. because that's what the industry is, and that's what gets churned out. And somebody's who is in a decision-making capacity decides what it is the audience must want to see. Mm-hmm. And they just miss the mark completely. Yeah. So, like, we get, I think, only one scene at the zoo. In the book, there's, like, you know, a couple of different scenes. That goes on
a little while.
Yeah. Right? We just get the first day. We get the one girl who gets a bottle to the throat. Mm-hmm. And that kind of, like, ends that. When Gall is asking about, like, what is the point of the games, and Sejanus, like, loses his shit. Man, they did Sejanus so dirty.
They really did. Sejanus was like a big nothing. I was kind of shocked. I thought he was going to be played up maybe almost too much, because he's such a relatable, like, sort of audience insert character.
Yep.
And then he's just kind of like, all he's there for is to annoy Coriolanus intermittently, you know?
He's like he's so flat. Mm-hmm. You don't, like, we see him having these outbursts, but there's no, like, real heart behind it, you know?
Yeah.
The actual real internal conflict that this kid is having about where he comes from versus where he is now. How he feels complicit in the oppression of the very people he comes from, how that is tearing him up inside, how he is, you know, a complete outlier because he's district and he's got these views that don't mesh with everybody else. He's just like when someone from the other side of your, say, your social justice or your political whatever, right? When they make a caricature of you, you know how like conservatives are like blue-haired liberals, and they make, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it feels like someone did with Sejanus. They stripped him down to like 1 or 2 beats.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's it, you know? It's, and the sort of, like, we know from the book that Coriolanus really, in his heart, deep down inside, hates Sejanus. Mm-hmm. Right? And is only tolerating him because you never know what good it might benefit, how it might benefit me down the line. This is a family that could be useful to me. Like, you don't really get that here. Mm-mm.
Yeah. And like I said, I get that a lot of that's internal monologue, but if you're making a movie, you got to figure it out.
You got to figure out a way to do that
and cope with that.
And then. I don't think it would even be that fucking complicated to do. Like, unlike you, I don't dream in cinematic, you know, universe style. I am not like even saying I have a better, like, I'm not going to say I have a better idea of how you could do this. I just feel in my spirit there's a better fucking way to do this.
Yeah.
You know?
I may not know how, but I know it's fucking possible.
I know it's possible. I don't know whether it's voiceover work, if it's you know, having us hear what Coriolanus is thinking as we're watching, you know, if it is a matter of, I would have even tolerated scenes that weren't in the book being included in the movie to help explain it. Like, very much have fucking Coriolanus have a journal that he fucking writes in where we get some insight, you know, even if it's like, you know, 30 seconds here and 30 seconds there, where he is writing what he really thinks, and then the audience gets to get some clue of what the fuck is going on inside this guy's head.
Yeah. Even something really small, like having Coriolanus smile at somebody And as soon as they turn their back, looking disgusted and contemptuous, there even like it would take a split second, and you would be able to be like, "Oh wow, that was all fake, gross," you know. But they don't do any sort of indicator there, and so everything just comes across as mostly sincere. You know, the part where he's like, "Why are you here?" and Sejanus says, "Because you're my friend." You need there to be something to let us know he doesn't mean that at all. It comes across like he does. We believe it. We know like he was pushed into being here. We know that because of the mechanics of the scene before. But emotionally speaking, it doesn't feel like he's lying. It doesn't, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm going to jump ahead.
Yeah.
Let's just go to the actual. First, there's the bombing in the arena, which again, just all of this feels so fake. I didn't even really care. And then we have the going into the actual Hunger Games in the arena that has been partially blown up and collapsed. And they are all just sort of thrown into this open space where there's a bunch of weapons, and the drama of them running is a lot more played up than it seemed like it really looked in the book. Like there's something to the fact that there was very little drama about it that made it more interesting, because you could see how they hadn't quite worked out the way that they were going to grip audiences with this kind of content. So there's all kinds of aspects of this that I feel didn't work in the original movies either, from having actors that were too old to putting too much of a score over the kills. I stand by all of that for this scene as well. And the way the camera work zooms in and out and is so, I don't even know how to describe that. It just feels like there's a drone flying around. No, it doesn't feel appropriate to not only the subject matter, but also I wanted to see the bad cameras and the lack of like eye line that the audience even had, because they weren't prepared. They didn't know how to set things up so that it would be viewable by everybody. There's only one point where she goes into a duct and Flickerman is like, we don't have cameras in that duct, but we will next year. And that's the only hint that we get. I was looking forward to seeing some awkward, quiet moments of everybody sort of like clearing their throats and shuffling a little bit because nothing was happening. And it's just played as high intensity as it is in the first movie. So, or in the original series. And we also have the fact that her friend gets bit by a bat on the way.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of the symptoms of his rabies kicking in pretty early.
Very early. Yeah.
Which was fine. I don't mind setting that up a little bit earlier. But it was funny how they decided they were going to have him weirdly think that Lucy did this to him, I guess. Because he keeps yelling, like, "What did you do to me?" And I was like, wait, where is this coming from? Does rabies cause paranoia? Is that a symptom? I don't know, actually. It may.
Which kid was it that had the bodies of the morgue bodies?
I can't remember his name.
Was that the one that was named Reaper? Or
maybe,
but
I think Reap is the one. Yeah, I think you're right.
They get rid of that as well, like that whole thing. I'm sorry.
They have at one point like them dragging a body over, but all of them just appear to have like somehow gotten there on their own to the same place. There's no person that has sort of dedicated themselves to doing this, which is part of them kind of weirdly dehumanizing the tributes themselves in this movie, just having them be this pack mentality of enemies instead of individual people.
And the thing too is that, like, we know from the original trilogy that the idea of the pack exists, right? And that like, you know, they go into the games, like District 1s and 2s usually, you know, link up and whatever. But so it feels like the people making this movie just like went based off of that.
Mm-hmm.
But in this timeline, that's not really like a thing yet. Yeah. You know, we don't have districts that are raising kids just to come to the games and dominate. You know, we're not doing all that shit yet. In some ways the movie, like, it's so similar to the first three in so many ways that aren't necessarily great. Like you said earlier, it really did just fall into a lot of the same traps. And they just, like, I was really hoping that this movie, they would have learned from those maybe missteps and taken an opportunity to do some things wildly different. And they didn't. They just like doubled down.
Yeah.
On a lot of those weird choices. I'm trying to catch up because we jumped ahead in my screen.
Yeah, I'm really trying to jump ahead. The whole scene with the snake bite, like, first of all, the snakes are not that scary. Also, they look also extremely fake in CGI.
My God, the snakes! The snakes coming out like a wave of like a ocean wave and swallowing people up, as opposed to like these vicious, venomous animals that are like feral and they're going to be like attacking people. Like, it just, I don't know. Oh, yeah. You guys. They completely took away whichever district it was and whichever tribute it was that like figured out how to control the drones, and instead literally had Coriolanus send in like nine bottles of water that he used as weapons when they all like when the pack has surrounded Lucy Gray. And then one of his classmates was like, "Hey, you can't use drones to attack other tributes. That's not fair." And then that's it.
That's it. He just says, "I'm just sending water," and then they're like, "Oh, okay. If that's all you're doing, I guess it's fine." And we already talked about the fact that they didn't do the thing with Clemencia starting to turn into a snake. And I just want to reiterate that fits right in with my thesis of them being embarrassed of what this is and feeling like, oh, having her turn into a snake. Don't you think that's a bit much?
Yeah, that's too far. That's kind of silly.
It's like, it is silly, but that's what makes it so scary, is that she would do something that weird.
Yep. Yeah. So the games are over before you fucking know it, kids.
Yeah.
Like, the games are fucking just over and Lucy Gray has won. And then there's this whole scene where Dr. Gall is going to like not
let them all die.
Yeah, and the whole class has to be like, let her go. Like, and they all, and come on.
Come now.
These kids don't give a fuck about these tributes. And if they
don't root for each other.
And they don't root for each other. And if you were going to try to make me believe that at this point of the games, these kids are starting to see the humanity, then you have to like show me some of that then. Like how did we get here? And we know in the books, these kids do start to get like a little, some of them anyway, start to get a little attached to their tributes. They completely cut out that the one girl's tribute refused, the same kid who's storing the bodies won't take any food, won't eat anything, and that she is like Clemmy, like that she is angry, like how angry she is because we never fucking see her again.
That's part of the the failing to humanize a lot of the outside characters because they just want to get through the major plot beats with our main. So the tributes don't get to really be humanized. They're all just the enemy. And his schoolmates don't really get to be humanized. They're all just the snobs. Yep. And Sejanus isn't one, but also Corio isn't one. Where, yeah, he fucking is. But the fact that they totally got rid of like the sequences where they're choosing who to support and why. They're making really derogatory comments about some of the tributes. And like, there are people who start without tributes at all because they all died before we even get here. So the room begins to sort of empty out as tributes die. And there are fewer and fewer people that are like part of the thing. You didn't even have to empty out the room. If you wanted the interaction of these characters to stay for the interest on the screen, have there be a side of the room that has all of the victors who are still in play and the people who have been cut out, and you can see the jealous looks that they're giving to everybody who is still a player, and don't have them rooting for Koryo's girl to win because they wouldn't want him to win. There'd be like 2 people who would be rooting for her to win simply on principle, and otherwise nobody wants anyone else to be able to fucking like come out of this ahead. If she is going to level the playing field by having absolutely everybody die, there would be certain students who would be all for that and just be like, that's only fair, you know? So the tone of it was so weird when they all start chanting and they pressure her. She would never allow that, first of all. It really took her power away in that scene. Gaul is never outdone in that sort of way. She always handles shit. So for them to get together at all was silly. And then for her to cave and say, let her out, it doesn't work. It just feels like the whole way it just doesn't work. I don't like it. I don't like it.
They change, and this is like not even important or like doesn't really make any sense why they would change it. But like in the book, the one kid, Hevingsby, is like related to the president. It's like his uncle or something. But here they make it his father.
I don't remember how that goes in this. I'll be honest.
They make him the son of the president, so that when he later dies from his injuries from the bombing. And she releases.
I didn't remember that he wasn't the president's son in the book. I was just like, oh, I must have missed that. Okay,
yeah,
so
no. And I guess I don't know. And again, it's just such a stupid thing, but there's so many other like weird fucking choices. I guess they do have the one kid bringing all the bodies up because then he covers them with the flag, so that is included in the movie.
He does with the one body. Does he do all the bodies?
There's like 4 bodies there. I don't know if we see them dragging them, but that's
what I kind of meant. It was like I felt like they all just were there, but not that we realized he was the one collecting them as a gesture. But I may be wrong. Maybe I just missed it.
And
I'll be honest, you guys. There got to a point where I was just kind of glazing over.
And he like he's yelling at the cameras like, you're gonna punish me for, dragging the flag. And then that's when Gaul cuts in to be like, because of the bombing and the son of our president's son has died, and now we're gonna show them who's boss. I'm not gonna let them have a moment of triumph. And she looks like a crazy person.
Yeah.
Which is what she's supposed to look like.
That's the thing, is like, she shouldn't look like it. We know she is, but she should look presentable. And they've got her in this fucking like red coat. I don't think that she wears that on screen, but I can't get over the fact that this is even an element. It's just so heavy-handed. This is like, I'm designing costumes in my like high school class, and I think that this is a really profound. Come on.
It's
anyway.
It's just
it's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed.
It's just, oh, you guys. I wanted, so he drops the handkerchief, the snakes come.
She doesn't die. We already did this. She doesn't die. We did this part. We can skip it. Let's jump ahead to him going down to District 12, looking with his Eminem looking ass.
That was like immediately what I thought as well.
He looks just like him. It's
he does.
Very funny.
Yeah.
I really want him to play some kind of Targaryen, because he's just got like the look of it, even though I don't think this is real hair color. Maybe it is. I don't know. But
I have to
regardless,
say,
his bone structure would work quite well.
He once he cut his hair, he was much more attractive to me.
I agree. Yeah, I was not a fan of those curls. But yeah, Sejanus is actually like on the train with him instead of it being a surprise when he gets there, which is fine. We can just do that. But and I think that this scene with the two of them is supposed to serve as the we're bonding now kind of moment. But I just don't really feel the chemistry between a lot of these actors is also part of the problem.
Yeah.
And chemistry doesn't necessarily just mean like sexually.
No, not
I don't feel that with the two of them. And so I think that might be part of what's sort of failing to connect for me. So we get the hanging. We have then the Hob and the singing with Lucy Gray and the interruption from Billy Tope in the midst of everything, and how he gets on stage and starts like pulling at her skirts. And in all of this, Snow comes forward and grabs Tope and just starts to beat the ever-living
shit out of him.
Yeah.
He hasn't even said, "How do you do to Lucy Gray?" yet. He hasn't even had an opportunity. This is how she sees that he's here. She
sees him in the audience before.
Does she?
But
I thought he was in the back and she couldn't see him. I didn't even.
She spots him and starts to sing with like big eyes, like she's reacting, but she keeps singing.
Gotcha.
I did think it was funny though, because they seemed to like feel that we can't just have Coriolanus go in there and start swinging. He's got to get punched by somebody so that he loses his temper with this guy. So he's just like in the mix and catches a stray fist from nobody. Like it doesn't even seem quite like they're aiming for him. And
does he get first? I thought he's watching Billy Tope and he runs up and beats the shit out of him. I don't think anybody hits him first.
I just watched it happen, ma'am.
Really? What the fuck?
Oh yeah. I feel like you probably started to glaze over too.
I'm looking at it right now.
This is hour 144. I'm gonna jump back a little bit.
Here it is.
Get your hands off me, Billy Tope. And he's starting to, let's see. Oh, it's right before that. Here it is. Crowd grunting, shouting. One guy gets basically suplexed into the ground. Choreo is just sort of watching as Billy approaches the stage and grabs at her skirts. Choreo steps forward as if he's going to come and start to deal with this problem. And
there it is. Yeah, some weird passerby punches him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he barely fucking loses like his balance.
Yeah, very nothing. So yeah, it felt for me like they were like, we can't just have him go in there beating this guy's ass. We have to make it so that he's already kind of pissed and decides to really go for it.
There was a lot of.
It's not super violent, so I don't mind that.
But they do this in a lot of different ways, where they remove like his part in it. You know, he's reacting to things that are happening to him and around him, as opposed to making choices.
Yeah.
Of how he wants to be and the things he wants to do and what kind of person he wants to be. And then they have him just rolling up on her in the meadow. Mm-hmm. They told me I'd find you here. And I'm like, I guess.
So there's a montage of him and her with the covey go into the lake. The indications that we get that he does not like the outdoors are him being mad that there are mosquitoes, which, you know what? There are mosquitoes. And they are terrible.
Nobody likes them.
He's right.
This is not character development. This is just a fact of life. Nobody likes mosquitoes. It doesn't tell you anything about them as a person.
So eventually, we have him like spotting Sejanus talking to Billy Tope and just being like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Then we have him being brought in by his commanding officer, and this dude being like, "You're too good for this bullshit.
What the fuck was this?
Training." Yeah. It's very much giving like, oh, he would never have chosen to leave Lucy Gray. It was actually a bummer for him to hear that he put into officer training because he loves her so much. He can't imagine leaving her. And I'm just like, you don't know this character at all. Do you?
Yep.
Never met him. Never met him. And then we have him calling Tigress, the weird FaceTime through a fishbowl that they do. I don't know what it is, but anyway, this is when he finds out that they have been evicted and he starts to feel a lot more motivation to like, you know, do the officer training after all because of the situation that his family is in. And just jump ahead a bit here to the scene where he finally records what Sejanus is saying. And it's a funny scene because it feels to me like it emphasizes much more than I remember how concerned Coriolanus is about what Sejanus is doing because he believes that he himself will be implicated. And I am not saying that Coriolanus wasn't worried about that. I am saying that he didn't say that to Sejanus the way that he does multiple times in this scene. And because of what Sejanus was like in the book, so sensitive and so grateful to Corio, I feel like had Corio played it this way, maybe it would have worked. Sejanus was somebody who, if you played on the fact that like after everything I've done, you're going to put me in that kind of danger, I feel like actually he may have really been like, oh, you know what, that is fucked up, you know. But here, Sejanus says it's worth the risk to do the right thing, and Corio says for you, your father will just buy your way out of it like he always does. Well, I'll be hung just for knowing you. Please. And don't make me rescue you again. And Sejanus just says, I don't need you to rescue me, Corio, and walks away. And it's like, he just doesn't address any of what Corio just brought up. The fact that he will be on the hook for this, you're just smooth sailing right on past that part. It's a weird scene. It feels like they're having two different conversations. And he doesn't address how I have a father with money who will be able to save me, whereas you don't. Like, none of the conversation, the argument that Corio was making is actually, to me, somewhat compelling. But they don't have Sejanus even really reacting to it.
Nope.
And it makes Sejanus look like a real piece of shit, actually.
They actually make Sejanus look much more selfish and inconsiderate and like, God forbid I say, not a villain, but like the bad guy in this friendship. Like, this is being presented like Coriolanus really cares for Sejanus, and Sejanus just doesn't give a fuck what his actions will mean for the people that care about him. And that is just completely not who Sejanus in the book was. He was always so deferential, so grateful for Coriolanus's friendship, for his support, for always having his back. He would never do anything if it was pointed out to him that he was endangering his best friend, his brother. He would not engage in that behavior.
Yeah. And it's weird because, like, due to the way this is framed here, Corio turning in his friend feels more reasonable. It's not good, and I don't like it. Obviously, this is a horrible thing to do. But it feels very different to me than it did in the book, where it was a lot more about the principle of him being a traitor to the capital. Coriolanus really believed in the capital in so many fundamental ways and despised Sejanus and his like district outlook on everything, that it was there was a lot of contempt in him for the way that Sejanus felt free to suckle on the teat of the wealth from the capital, but also despise it, and was just always like whining and moaning about it, but also profiting from it. So this like moment of turning him in, it's certainly self-interested with him being worried about getting caught himself. but it's also feels like he actually in some ways really is believing the what's the word I want, the principles behind it and the idealism behind it, patriotism even. I thought in the book as being somewhat real. You know, I could see people thinking like he didn't really believe all that. He was just telling himself what he needed to get himself out of a tight spot. And you could interpret it that way. But I feel like his thoughts pretty much point to the fact that he thinks the Capitol is all that stands between us and chaos, and Sejanus is about to fucking ruin everything. You know? Yeah,
I agree. By this time in the book, we are to understand that Coriolanus really is started. And that's the other thing they cut too, is the work that Gaul had Coriolanus do about why the games were, like, she asked them why are the games important, but like the whole essay, the study question to write about what you think, you know, the world needs and why it's important and what really drives the games. And we don't get, I don't think we get Snow really engaging in that line of thinking. Yeah. So when you're watching the movie, I don't know, you just like, it's just so disconnected. Everything is so like it's telling a bunch of different stories all in one movie, and it's just so disjointed. I don't know, guys. I don't know. I'm looking at this part now. They're at the Hob again, and she's singing the you know, Pure as a Driven Snow song, which we know when she's singing in the book, he is like elated. He can't take his eyes off of her, and all he can think about is, this is like proof that she loves me. She's definitely talking about me. Billy Tope is no longer a threat to us. But in the movie, she's singing and he wanders off to the back where the shenanigans are happening. And she's still on stage singing the song to him, and he's like off investigating like what's going on behind these closed doors. I noticed that too. I was kind of like, wait, why did you guys set it up that this is the song she's singing here? What is this? And so he goes back, and it is the confrontation between Spruce and Sejanus, Tope and Mayfair. And this is when everything goes like off the rails. Yeah. And we have Lucy Gray joining them. Ultimately, Coriolanus shoots Mayfair because she threatens to just tell her dad about the whole deal. Everybody's going to hang.
A thing you definitely want to do in a room full of people with illegal weapons is tell them how I'm going to go tell my daddy and he'll string you all up. Yeah.
And then it's like when old boy is like, she won't do it. She won't tell anybody, trying to give her an out to save her life. She then says, what do you mean I won't do it? Ask Lucy Gray what I will and won't do. How'd you enjoy the arena? Like, what? Yeah.
Yeah. And this is not, I don't even have a problem with this movie wise, because people are fucking idiots and they will do stupid shit like this. So, you know, the old girl maybe is just a dum-dum. But it was one of those scenes that I was kind of like, oh, do you not hear? It's like when I watch my murder mysteries that I love and somebody is like, I know that you committed that murder, and unless you pay me $6,000, meet me alone in a dark courtyard at 2 a.m. where nobody will see either of us, and you can definitely murder me extremely easily with no witnesses so that I can pretend I'm going to get that money and not be another victim. You know, this person already has committed murder and does not mind it, and you're out here blackmailing them like they aren't willing to do the exact same shit to you. Okay, I guess.
I'm going to need you to meet me at a crowded mall at the food court in front of Cinnabon. Literally. That's where you're meeting me at.
Yes. Exactly. I'm going to need you to meet me there, and I'm going to have my phone on record, and I am also going to have like 2 friends at the Orange Julius. Dating myself with that one.
I know, right? The kids are like, "Get the orange what now?"
Julius.
Guys,
that character.
There was a time in American malls where orange juice was so popular.
It was the thing. Those shits were expensive too.
They didn't even taste that good because it wasn't orange juice.
No, it was like
an orange drink.
Yeah. Purple drink.
It was drink. It was orange drink.
Sugar, water, purple. All right, so then we have her coming to Coriolanus, telling him that she's going to run away, and he finally is just like, you know what, I'm going to come with you. And she says, what about your family? And he says, I just learned Hoff is sending me to officer training. None of that matters now. And she says, you were going to leave. And he says, it's all Panem. And the thing is, it would be a lie. But it is all Panem in this moment because he didn't choose officer training. Mm-hmm. So her being like, I can't believe that you were going to leave is her misunderstanding.
Yep.
Instead of exactly what he was going to do.
Yep.
Because truthfully, Corio doesn't care enough about you to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
So the it's all Panem thing. As soon as they find that gun, they'll hang me, no matter which district I'm in. When can you go? So we have them meeting up. We do not, of course, have the progressive realization that he hates this whole thing as they're walking because we don't have any internal monologue or anything. Mm-hmm. I wanted complaining Corio. I wanted Corio getting a splinter and whining about it. I wanted him to be like, oh God, it's so wet. Oh, this sucks. I wanted him to really be precious about the conditions out here and how he's starting to already have some second thoughts about things. Mm-hmm. But it really just is played like he is 100% on board until he finds the guns. So the way that this is done as well, because Lucy Gray is played as less non-threatening than I pictured her. I pictured her as much less threatening than she kind of comes across in the movie. She is a lot more sassy than I expected. And a lot more, there's a kind of vibe to her of like, I've seen some shit. And I know that she has in the book as well, but it felt like she kind of played this persona that she hadn't, and that was all for the songs. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There was a sort of innocence about the way that she decided to just, I don't know how to explain it.
She plays a very like non-threatening, down-homey, kind of innocent, sweet girl for the Hunger Games. And I thought that was very much an act. Like a way, because the whole point of her, and they don't really lean into this in the movie, but how important it is to get the people in the Capitol to see her as human. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They gut the whole thing, unless of course I missed it because you admitted it, so I'm going to admit it as well. At a certain point, I also started to be like looking at my phone, you know what I mean, mm-hmm. Like trailing off a little bit, but. Remember, like in the book, Coriolanus has this whole like scheme to make everybody think that she's not really even district. You know, she's you know. So it really in the book, you really feel like this is an act that she understands. She has to portray this persona in order to survive the games and to get donations, and how important it is to get sponsors and all that. And then you think when you go to 12 and you get to meet her, what you're going to find instead is a young woman who's lived a very hard life, who knows her way around, who knows how to take care of herself and how to take care of her family, you know. Mm-hmm. But what we get, in my opinion, when we go to 12 is just sort of an extension of who we had met in the Capitol.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, very much. And also I want to point out that like in the book, he has gone through Sejanus's things already by the time that he like turns him in. and found all this money.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
We don't have that here. So when he goes through his stuff after Sejanus dies, there's no money. That's not even a thing in this.
Excuse me.
Which I think is a really significant omission, because again, it feels like they're trying to soften him in some weird way of being like, oh, he was just looking through his stuff for old time's sake.
Mm-hmm.
When it's like, no, he literally stole that money and sent it to Tigris and then stole it from Tigris.
Yep.
You know, the monetary motivation is major for him, and we're trying to act like it's circumstantial, and it's like, no, that's the whole thing.
They soften him so much in this movie because I think they want to sell the romance, and they need us to not think he's an awful human being. Otherwise, we won't wish for them to have a happy ending. Mm-hmm. But my thing is, there's no need to set it. There's no need for that premise, because we know already at the beginning of this movie, because we are familiar with this property, that they don't get a happy ending. So you don't need to try to like soften him up so that I buy this romance. Like, I don't know. I don't. It was like they said, shit, if people knew how awful this fucking guy was, they wouldn't want to, like, they're not going to buy that she falls for him. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, we, the audience, know how awful he is. So when she's falling for him, we have this tension of like, oh, girl,
baby, no,
what are you doing? But we also understand it because we're watching him play a caring person. We're watching him pretend to be something he's not. Where the movie is like, no, he really could be like this. And no, they really could have maybe been together. Oh, but circumstances got in the way. Circumstances didn't get in the way. He is incapable of giving a fuck about anybody else in a real way.
In any way that risks himself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He can do it when all situations and circumstances are ideal. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to any sacrifice on his part, it's just not going to happen.
Yep. And because he is so self-serving, everything that gets in the way of that service is a threat, like a level 10 red alert threat to be handled, right? And it doesn't matter what despicable action he takes, because in his mind it's justified, because it's protecting himself because of coming from deprivation and having an idea of the greatness he's supposed to embody, and that it was stolen from him. You know what I mean? He's such an interesting character, really. Coriolanus Snow is a really, really compelling character. And they just fucking, I don't know, man. I don't know.
So I had brought up like what she's like, because when he says 3 people's enough for me, and she stops and catches him, this is the beginning of the suspicion really becoming apparent between the two of them. And in the moment, in the book, I felt like she knows, right? Like I was like, oh, this is starting to fall apart here. But I didn't have anything really concrete to point to about the way she behaved that made it feel like, uh-oh. It was just more like, I think she's aware he's lying, but I don't know if she's put things together yet. And then when they're in the cabin in this and he finds the guns, she's the one who says, you could, you know, all of those guns could disappear and you could go home. I'm the only loose end there is to tie up. And she's the one who like puts herself out there as a potential liability for him, when in the book he thinks of her as a liability first. He's the one who goes there and starts to be like, wait a second, do I even want to do this? And so when she leaves because she's going to go dig up some Katniss, you don't clock it that she might just be running away. You think that that's what she's doing until it begins to sort of like coalesce in a few minutes as he goes outside and she's not there. But here in this moment, when she says, I'm the last like loose thread, and he says, but you wouldn't tell her, of course not, is very unconvincing. It really sounds like she's straight up lying and doesn't even mind if he knows that she's lying. And so it makes him going after her feel, again, a little bit more understandable, because she made it sound like she's gunning for his ass in that conversation. You know what I'm saying?
The whole way that he's standing holding this gun and looking at her before she even says anything. And then it's like he's standing and he's like, I know he's happy, but he's happy because he's found this gun that has been tormenting him. The idea of this gun being found has been tormenting him. So there's this relief. And then when she says the line about being a loose end, they actually he makes a face that suggests that he's actually hurt that she would even suggest that she's a loose end. Like
he's hurt and he's shocked. It never even
like he's the one being betrayed by this thing that she just said. When we know you, sir, we're running this script already in your head. So she leaves to go dig up some Katniss. And
or does she?
And a little bit of time passes. He goes and deals with the guns, and then is starting to be like, it's been a little while. Haven't seen her. Wonder what's going on. And then picks the gun back up and starts going after her, starts hunting her. And they have him aim like right at her, which I don't remember being a thing.
I feel like he did, but it was brief.
I remember.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did.
Yeah, I definitely remember him like spraying like everywhere in like a fit of anger. But but this sort of like aiming at her, getting her in his sights and firing at her, and her like seemingly going down. I didn't recall that from the book. They also do a thing where they have the snake hidden underneath the scarf.
Yeah, and that's when he just yells like, are you trying to kill me? And then he gets this expression and he yells, are you trying to kill me again? Like as if the first time he said it he didn't believe it, but then when he heard himself say it out loud, all of a sudden he's realizing. All of this just makes Lucy look like the one who's kind of gone off the deep end all of a sudden, and it's just weird.
And like he yells, after everything I've done for you, which according to this movie, Lucy Gray, what the fuck are you doing? You know, he wasn't thinking about hurting you. He was going to run away with you. He wasn't complaining the whole time you were walking. He wasn't making it very clear that this outside wilderness life wasn't for him. He didn't sneak off and not sneak off, but he didn't pursue officer school. It just got forced on him, you know, because he wasn't active in any of that shit. He really does come across as, oh my God, I forgot this part where he's like sniffing the fucking scarf because he's.
Right.
Jesus
I miss
Christ.
her so much.
Oh my God.
Already. Let me just remember the good times in the rain with a gun. Okay, I guess.
Yeah, you guys. It just
it don't work.
It does not. It does not. So so eventually he leaves the woods. We do see a shot. She does seems like she goes down, but you know, we don't know for certain what happened.
He goes over there and he doesn't find her, and there's still footsteps or footprints. But yeah, that's all we get. Yeah,
and she drops something. He picks up something. There's like an earring or something. So I guess he's going to have a keepsake forever now. Puts it in his.
Is that what that was?
I think it's one of her earrings. Yeah, I'm not sure. It looked like a little piece of jewelry.
To see it, because I could have sworn that it was was this the moment with his dad's compass kind of thing, you know? But then I was like, oh, doesn't make sense that she would have that. Why would she have that?
It's circular with some pearl dealies on it. I assumed it was the earring.
I didn't even, the scene is so, guys, it's really jarring how much he looks like Eminem. I know I made this joke, but he really does.
He really does. He has the same kind of face. And that haircut is lending to it, but he just does. All right, guys. So he's in the woods. She's singing, and then I think it's the bird singing, and he starts shooting at all the fucking birds.
That is very funny to me.
But we don't get his deep disgust at these things, you know?
No.
So even though I guess you could just say, well, he's frustrated in this moment because they can't find her and now the birds are everywhere, but like it loses some of its oomph, you know?
Yeah.
Because these things are building on top of other things that have happened that just aren't coming across in the movie. So they don't land in a way that's like impactful.
And I'll be honest, you know, we complained about the whole thing with him hating the Mockingjays so intensely. So a part of me understands that it may sound wild that we're complaining that they don't include that, but it's just part of his overall characterization being so lacking that we're like, we would even have been okay with you doing more of that if it got something across about him as a person.
Exactly.
Because they just failed so utterly, in my opinion, at getting the audience to understand who he was and what drove him, that we want anything. If you can give us anything, we'll take it.
A crumb.
A crumb, please. Yeah. Then have him dumping the guns in the lake. And he has the compass already in his pocket. So he has that with him. But yeah, I don't know where the spot is where he finds the thing on the ground. I keep backtracking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I would tell you, but I'm all way back now. He's on the train going to officer school. I'm not.
Yeah.
That's another thing too, is we find out once he gets on the train, like, at least I think he tells them that, you're not going to 2. There's been a change of plan. Which is different. Like in the book, he gets on, think he's going to 2, and then they wake him up and like, no, you're actually going to the Capitol. So he knows as soon as he gets on a train, that when he leaves 12, he knows he's going back to university. And we have this end scene with him and Dr. Gall. She's wearing that crazy lab coat again.
Thing. Didn't anybody think, hey, maybe don't wear that, you psycho?
Nope.
Somebody should have gotten some PR on that. Oh, here it is. I think that might be a hair clip. Might be.
I wasn't sure. Earring, hair clip. It could be one of those things that you use when you wear a fancy scarf, since he gave her a nice scarf. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
But whatever it is, he stashes it in his pocket. Because, again, a memento.
A memento. Anyway, so, all right, we have him then ahead in time with his hair starting to grow back in and his grandmother saying how handsome he looks. And we see all of these like sweet treats, profiteroles and petit four and coffee and just, you know, the real like
very nice clothes
right now.
Very nice clothes. And yeah, he takes this little Sejanus's little lockbox. I love how happy the grandmam looks, you know, now that they're back. Like the whole apartment is just like decked out now, like it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And
there's no reference to the fact that the Plinths have basically adopted him, though.
Nope, just what Dr. Gall says about how the Plinths are going to be responsible for his tuition and whatever else he needs. But nothing about how they've moved in and their families have melded into like one big family now. Like even if they could have had like Ma Plinth at the table with Tigress while he's, you know what I mean? Something. Mm-hmm. But there's like, there's none of that. And he takes the little lockbox and goes to see Dean Highbottom. And
I didn't catch him leaving the poisoned drug, because he doesn't do the thing where he sweeps everything into the trash like in the book.
Nope.
Is it supposed to be that he left some in the box?
It's in the lockbox, yeah. You see him when he's gathering Sejanus's shit from the barracks. there's a scene where he finds the 3 bottles of Morphling, and it's like a close up on with them in his hand, and then he just like puts them back in the box.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, he comes to see Highbottom, and it's just like he just dumps everything on the desk. This is all his shit. I didn't think you'd want like all of this going back to his parents.
Kind of weak.
Yeah, he's just like, I didn't think they would. They just want this one picture, and I'm just gonna leave everything else here. And then Highbottom finally gets to give us his speech. Guys,
what?
I said earlier that, Dinklage did the best he could do with this, and he does. And it just makes me sad because if they could get this right, what else could they have gotten right?
Yeah.
Both scenes with Dinklage and Coriolanus are probably my favorite scenes in the whole movie. Yeah, it just makes me sad. And yeah, while he's telling Sejanus how he tried Morphling for the first time after the Crastius Snow has turned in the assignment, he's actually grabbing the Morphling out of Sejanus's little pile of stuff. So he has it like he's like playing with it in his hand as he's giving this speech to Coriolanus. And just talking about what you've done for the games, like, giving people a good show. And he says, tell me what she said when you left 12, your little songbird. And it's such a small line that's not even that important, but also is everything, is when this moment happens, when he says, what did she say? Coriolanus thinks he's talking about Dr. Gall. Right? And
I didn't even catch that.
And Highbottom has to be like, no, your little songbird. But they don't do that here. They just, so we don't even get that moment of Snow already not even thinking about Lucy Gray. We don't even get that little glimmer into how his brain works and how she's not even what he's thinking about anymore. The little moments like that like you just stretch that beat out by like a second or so, and throw that little line in. It changes how you look at this man when he doesn't clock that this Dean Highbottom is asking about the supposed love of your life and what was it like to leave her, and your mind doesn't even go to her. That's such a good example of how his brain works and what's happening behind those eyes. It would have taken 10 seconds, and we just don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just about how she's disappeared and people are thinking that maybe the mayor had her killed and that whole thing.
I like when he says it's a real mystery. He laughs.
Fortune. So that is the only nod that we really get to the fact that he has been adopted, but they're not part of their lives in that scene at all. So all of this is like told to us verbally, but the Plinths are not a presence in this book or in this movie.
Nope. Yeah. I like that it feels like Highbottom is being very suspicious about what happened to Lucy Gray and is low key accusing Snow of, but because up until the last minutes in the forest, there's no indication that Snow would ever do anything like this, not in a real way. And I guess people could be like, well, you saw him kill 3 people practically. What do you mean the movie didn't show you he was capable of that? But they had him, I don't know, the way in which he killed those 3 people, each time he was just really robbed of, I hate to use the word agency because I feel like we're always talking about characters' agency. And I like it's,
yeah, but that's the thing.
But
the reason we're always talking about
that
it's because they take it away when they adapt shit. It's a fucking theme.
It's a real problem.
Everybody less unlikable on screen, and it's just so frustrating.
Yeah. And then it just ends with like a close-up of him as he's looking at this big statue in the fountain. And then it has the fucking voiceover. It's the things we love the most.
Mm-hmm. I can't believe they added that voiceover.
You don't deserve. You do not.
What are you fucking doing? That is just like, it's again just the most on the nose shit. That is Dr. Gall's lab coats level of ham-fisted. Dial it back. We know, like,
yeah.
I just get so mad when there is this kind of like lack of faith in the audience, you know?
Yeah, we're idiots.
It's
we're all idiots.
Yep.
And I mean, this shit got 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, so maybe they know what they're talking about. Like, I don't know.
From the audience,
I don't know what to say. I don't know, guys. I don't know what to do with this. This was terrible. And you know, I very rarely like just will come right out and say something was like irredeemable. This was terrible. And I'm so sorry if you loved it. If you loved it and I love you, then I still love you. You know what I mean? Like, we can still be friends. But
RoShawn very generously allows that she will remain friends with people despite them liking this piece of shit movie. What a generous soul.
I just can't get over how bad it was. Like, I can't remember the last time I watched something, especially for the show, where I, like, texted you, like, what the fuck is this shit? Just like.
And it was so funny because I had already started to be like, what are we doing? And I almost texted you, girl, this is fucking terrible. And I was like, no, I don't know if she's even started watching yet. I don't want to prejudice her. And then I got that text from you, like literally within like 3 minutes of me restraining myself from texting you first. And I just started cracking up because you were so much more like just direct than I even would have been.
This was like, I'm looking at, like, I have like messages open on my computer so I could see like our chat. And I literally just was like, what even is this movie? Like, yeah, guys. And it sucks too because, like, even though I didn't love the ending of the book, I was really disappointed in the ending of the book. The whole book wasn't terrible, you know? It wasn't.
Exactly.
And they just, like you said, there's this weird disconnect. And I'm wondering, because we often cover like YA and like sort of fantasy shit, I'm wondering if it's a problem of the like, because well, what am I trying to say? Like, it's not that they don't know how to make deeply unlikable characters compelling on television, because we have, in my opinion, Walter White is one of the least likable characters on TV in the last like decade or whatever, right? As far as
except that a lot of people liked him.
Listen, those people were like, don't know how to watch TV. Like, you're not supposed to like him, and yet you can't take your eyes off of him, and you can't like tear yourself away from the story. And then I don't know if it's because these fantasy movies or because they're like PG-13 and they think that like younger audiences can't, like, I don't know what the deal is. And this theory that I'm working on falls apart when you move to like A Song of Ice and Fire, because that's not a show that's geared towards like young adults, but it's not like YA, right?
Sure.
It's not that. And they fall into the same trap. I don't know what it is or who gets to decide, what type of characters can be god awful, and yet I'm going to put them on the screen in all of their fucked upness, but I'm going to write it in such a way that you're going to fucking watch everything and not be able to turn away from it. And then be met with another character and they make a decision. Is it because they think like teenage girls won't have a crush on him if he's too awful? Like, I don't know.
Probably. That's probably part of it. The heartthrob factor. Heart rate.
Well, it has been 2 hours of talking about this, and I think we have said about enough. So,
Agreed. One thing that I will say is that I think that part of the thing is sticking to PG-13, and I said this about the original Hunger Games as well, that like the violence wasn't violent enough. It just was, the horror of it was so sanitized in so many ways, and that was accomplished in on a variety of fronts, part of which is their appearance, part of which is the like ages, but like the takeaway that I have about who likes these movies is that the people who like the movies like the books for very different reasons than the reasons I like the books. Because it's the thematic elements are so incredibly important to me that you keep the characters and you keep the setting and the general storyline and don't hold on to those themes, and it no longer is the same property for me. But then there are going to be people who, you know, it's the characters that you've grown to like, and you're getting to finally see some things on screen and you're satisfied with that. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it, but I think that it just shows like a totally different priority set about what drew you to the series and made you really sit up and be like, wow, this is really good, you know?
Yeah.
So
just a lot of missed opportunities.
Yeah. It's just it's a very immature, the director, there's like a really kind of immature energy to these movies, a really surface level understanding that is, like I have said repeatedly, missing the point.
Yeah.
So, but what can you do? They can't all be winners. So, all right, guys. Well, those of you who have been curious, I just wanted to remind you that what RoShawn and I are going to do next is The Maid and the Crocodile by Jordan Ifueko, which is the next book in the Raybearer series. If you haven't read the Raybearer series, I cannot recommend it enough. It is such a great time. We cover the first 2 books. And this third book is not like a sequel. It is different characters, but it is set in the same universe. So I don't yet have a plan for what we're covering after that. We have danced around potentially covering the Dresden Files TV show just for the fun. And I kind of do want to check out something real lighthearted like that.
I think that would be a nice break. And a nice way to like get back into that universe in a way that doesn't involve like trying to find new material to cover like short stories and shit. 'Cause I think we covered pretty much everything.
There's that one Toot story that I read only the first few pages and thought I had read you the whole story. Do you remember when I did that?
I don't.
Yeah, I thought the story ended and it was just a weirdly formatted ebook, and the story was actually like 6 times as long as I thought it was. So I just stopped in this really weird place and was like, and that's the story. And then I got a bunch of messages from people who were like, excuse me, that is incorrect.
Oh, that's funny.
So yeah, that's one of the few things that we haven't yet covered, and we could definitely do that as well. Because we just need stuff to ease us back into the world, because we're going to be jumping in, but I don't plan on having us, like, I may do a reread of the last few books on my end, but I'm not going to be doing an official reread on the show or anything. Right. So, need a little help.
Yeah, I think it would be a nice way to get our feet wet back into that universe. I'm really curious about the show and haven't watched, I think I watched one episode with you maybe when I was visiting. I feel like maybe you put an episode on. Did you? I can't remember, or maybe we just talked about it.
I don't remember at all. I feel like if we had watched one, we would have watched all of them because there's not that many, but maybe not.
Yeah, I can't remember. So yeah, I just think it would be fun. I mean, what I did see of it, whether I watched it because I wouldn't have been spoiled because, we were so far into the books by the time the show, was trying to be a thing.
No, the show had been out before we started the books.
No, I mean, by the time I became aware of it and you told me about it, and you know what I mean?
Okay.
We were pretty deep into the series. But I saw it on, not an actual episode, but I saw a cast photo because we talked about the casting. Because I remember me and you talked about how Karen isn't blonde for some reason.
Yeah.
And all of this is to say that the quality of the production looks like it might be kind of goofy.
Oh yeah, it's not high quality.
It's kind of low budget.
Yeah, it is.
So it seems like it might just be kind of a funny thing to cover because I don't expect it to be ooh, this is riveting. This is HBO prestige drama. It's not that. It's not that kind of show. This is
it's real
CW
weird.
Energy is what I'm getting from it.
Yeah, that is accurate. Yes, I would say that is exactly on point. Keep your expectations around there, and I think you will not be disappointed. But yeah, so I just wanted to let everybody know because we've been getting this question. And yeah, it's too bad because the series is so great, and to end it with this terrible movie. It deserved better. Everything deserved better. But I think that the overall series remains unsullied and is still just a really spectacular piece of writing.
It really the first 3 books, so good. I was, you guys were along for the ride, so good. This book kind of falls apart at the end, but it was a good read for the first 2/3. Yeah. The movie, awful. Let us never discuss it again.
All right, guys. Thank you all again so much for listening. We love you very much.
We do.
Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
Are you coming to the tree where dead man called out for his love to free? Strange things that happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.